This is a review of Irish author Eoin Colfer's best-selling book, Artemis Fowl. This is the first story in an 8-book series that takes place over the course of the titular character's adolescent years. The story has been adapted into 2 separate graphic novel series, and Disney is slated to release a film adaptation this spring. The book is a Young Reader's Choice Award winner, a winner of the Garden State Teen Book Award and the Irish Book Award in the Irish Children's Book Senior category, and in 2010 it was selected as the favorite title produced by Puffin Books. Because the prologue is quite brief and does a wonderful job of introducing the main character, I will read it. How does one describe Artemis Fowl? Various psychiatrists have tried and failed. The main problem is Artemis's own intelligence. He bamboozles every test thrown at him. He has puzzled the greatest medical minds and sent many of them gibbering to their own hospitals. There is no doubt that Artemis is a child prodigy, but why does someone of such brilliance dedicate himself to criminal activities? This is a question that can be answered only by one person, and he delights in not talking. Perhaps the best way to create an accurate picture of Artemis is to tell the by now famous account of his first villainous venture. I have put together this record from first-hand interviews with the victims, and as the tale unfolds you will realize that this was not easy. The story began several years ago, at the dawn of the 21st century. Artemis Fowl had devised a plan to restore his family's fortune, a plan that could topple civilizations and plunge the planet into a cross-species war. He was 12 years old at the time. As you can see from this opening, Artemis Fowl is a child genius and a calculating criminal mastermind. He comes from a long line of career criminals who have built fabulous wealth for the Fowl family through their misdeeds, so he's got a remarkable legacy to live up to. In the lead up to the story's beginning, Artemis's father disappeared during a shipwreck at sea, and since then his mother has completely checked out mentally. In his father's absence, and with his mother's dissociation and delusion, Artemis is left to his own devices and does pretty much whatever he wants. He has spent the last 2 years draining the family fortune to fund expeditions to look for his father. Now, with the Fowl wealth almost depleted, he has to find a new way to rebuild the accounts and fund his rescue efforts. A fun premise that this story is built on is the idea that no one else but Artemis could make this story happen, because at the age of 12, he's just young enough to still believe in the existence of things like fairies and magic, but he's also smart enough and unscrupulous enough to exploit it. He uncovers the secrets of a fairy society that lives underground and concocts a scheme to kidnap a fairy in order to hold it for ransom in exchange for gold. What he doesn't bargain for, though, is that these aren't the fairies of bedtime stories. They're armed and dangerous, and the fairy he captures happens to be an officer in the Lower Elements Police Reconnaissance Force, or LEPRECON for short. As you can see already, Colfer has crossed the lines between several genres to create a story that feels thoroughly unique and modern. It's fantasy with mythological creatures and magic. It's sci-fi with an underground technologically advanced society. It's a crime thriller with a 12-year-old James Bond-esque villain. And it's a heist story with Artemis, his hostage, Captain Holly Short, and the rest of the Lower Elements police force all maneuvering to achieve their objective without revealing the existence of fairies to the outside world. In the author's own words, it's, quote, "Die Hard with fairies." The writing style is witty, punny, and filled with tongue-in-cheek humor, which provides plenty of crossover appeal for older readers, but the true target audience would be children of a similar age to the main character, around 12. It's fast-paced and action-packed. There are no human curse words, but the fairy curse word, Darvit, appears frequently. The narrative states that there's no point in translating the word since it would only be censored. It does have some violence that might be too scary for young children. For example, Artemis's bodyguard takes on a giant berserking troll with a medieval mace and a handgun. It also has some bathroom humor, because dwarves dig tunnels by chewing up dirt and rocks and spewing it out the other end as they burrow. So there's a lot in here that would appeal to young male readers. It also appeals to girls, though, because the primary hero in the story is Captain Holly Short, the first female LEPRECON captain ever. She's a clever, capable, fearless character who makes a great role model for girls. Another great role model for kids is Artemis's bodyguard, who is simply named Butler. He's the third most skilled martial artist on the planet, and even though he's in the employ of a career criminal, he's loyal, selfless, and honorable, while at the same time being all around awesome. This story teaches that the lines between good guys and bad guys aren't always as clear as we think. Although Artemis sees himself as an evil genius, and the fairies are quick to agree, his motives are understandable, and ultimately he learns some lessons about valuing people as more than pawns in a game. He eats some humble pie, and he gets his first lessons in gratitude and sacrifice for others. On the whole, the author has done a fantastic job of creating complex, sympathetic characters the reader can root for on both sides of the conflict. The story also shows how important parents are in the lives of children. Artemis isn't a bad kid. He's a kid who does bad things because he lacks parental figures in his life, and he's received some questionable teaching, but there's hope for him. One extra detail that I like about these books is that Artemis gets his hands on what essentially amounts to the Fairy Bible, which you can see pictured here, and he translates it. You can see here in the story a sample of the fairies' gnomish language, and over here is Artemis's translation in English. You can see these same fairy symbols along the bottom of the pages all throughout the book. Several books in this series have messages like this, and kids can use this decoded translation here in the story to decipher the message. They add extra fun details about the story. Sometimes prophecies about Artemis, sometimes little tidbits about his life outside of the story. So it's a fun, interactive piece for curious young minds to play with, and once they've learned it, they've got their own secret code to write in their diary or pass notes in class or however they want to use it. I would recommend this book and this series for middle grade readers of both genders, as well as for anyone who loves fantasy, magic, action, thriller, or just plain fun, funny reading. And I highly recommend picking it up before the movie release. After all, the book is bound to be better. Thank you.